Okay, it is Monday, November 5th. We are at the Sisters of Good Shepherd Convent on Poole Street. I should say this is November 5th, 2018. This is Nicole Morin Scribner. I am a volunteer with the Biddeford Cultural and Heritage Center. Also in the room is Diane Sear, who is the organization's president. And today we have the honor of interviewing Sister Viola. How do you say your last name?
Lausier.
Lausier.
The AU is like O.
Okay, so thank you for agreeing to meet with us today, Sister Viola. So I guess I'm gonna start at the beginning. If you're willing to tell us, can you tell us the date that you were born? When were you born?
July 21st, 1924.
And were you and where were you born?
In Grand Isle, Maine.
Were you born in a hospital?
No, at home.
At home. And who did the delivery?
It's the Dr. Fauché.
Dr. Fauché.
Yeah.
So was that the norm back then to be born at home?
Yes.
And the doctor did the home deliveries?
Oh, yes, he did.
Okay. So tell me the story about how your family came to Biddeford.
My family never came to Biddeford. It's because I entered the convent and they sent me, this was not my first assignment. When I entered, it was on 69 Adams Street. That was the postulate. And then after, when we made our first vows, we went to Quebec for a year. And then after that year, we got assigned. But I was assigned to Massachusetts at that time. And I was a teacher in Massachusetts. And then after, I was sent to St. Anne's Home in Methuen. This was an orphanage, and we helped to turn it to a home for emotionally disturbed. Sister Teresa Boutot and I worked an awful lot on that. So at that time, it was children of broken families. So, and it still existed, and they did so well that they are continuing our work, but adding it. So this is, because right now, if you study psychology, they're going to send you there for an internship. So they're doing very well, so that's good. And then after, I had worked with the state at St. Anne's. So they sent me to St. Andre's 33 years ago. And because I had worked with the state, and they were having a hard time here to work with the state to really get funds and all that. And they thought I would be able to do it. And I was happy to do it because I always work with the state. I don't blame them if they do something wrong, but I prove them by report. So I haven't said anything, but they know by the report. And I was very, very active with the congressmen and legislation, because this is how St. Andre's got help. So I would tell them everything that's going on, and if we were a hard time, sure, then they would support us. And the first one that helped us to get funds from the state was Senator John Cox for Bangor, with the approval of Governor Curtis. So that, and because at that time, when St. Andre's started on Poole Road here, in the 70s, society changed and they accepted women, pregnant, young women, much more than they did before. So that's why the sisters did a very good study that they would have to change the way that we give services. So they went to the state, and the state said, we will help you to start group home. So this is how it happened. And they had given us an allocation through the Aid to Dependent Children Institute. So it has helped, the first allocation. So then the sisters bought 3 group homes. one in Bangor, one in Lewiston, and one in Biddeford. And Biddeford was always for pregnant women. In Bangor, it was also pregnant women, but also for emergencies. And in Lewiston, it was for troubled teens. So these are all the work that we do. Huh? So it was interesting. I like helping these young women and all that, give them. And when I was at the office, they used to come and show me their babies, yeah, because I encouraged them and all that. So yeah, but they always knew that I liked babies, so they would come and see them, yeah. But I really enjoyed working, and then after, for Christmas, people would ask what we would need, and I would always said baby clothes, huh? So I had fixed the garage with all baby clothes and whatever. So if one not needed something after they left there, because I gave them everything, but so they would call me and they would come and I would give them something to eat. Even the social worker at the state would call me, do you have, because I have this girl that have nothing. But the most important, I'll never forget that, this grandmother called me. And her granddaughter was pregnant. And she said, we can't give that baby away. I'm willing to help her, but I don't have one thing. I don't have one thing, one clue. So I said, don't worry, I'll fix everything up, all what you need for a baby. And then after, I'll call you, and you can send someone to pick me up. But the grandmother did that for her. And a couple of years after, she came to show me the baby, and she was so thankful. And see, you never know when people need help. But you have to encourage them to be a good mother. See, this is the most important, because today, if you don't show them how to be a good mother, the baby is going to suffer. Yeah. And there's so many things that you have to show them as a mother, to really help the child. So I really enjoy that. All the 33 years I helped, I was in finance, but the other side was always helping the birth mothers.
I wondered about that, even though you were the finance director, whether you didn't start as the finance director. Did you start when you first started working for St. Andre's? You started as the finance director?
That's what I was in Massachusetts. Yeah, when they took me out of teaching, they put me in finance. So that's how, but I knew how to work with the state. Yeah, so.
I was going to ask you about that, because you've got a very interesting progression of your career.
Yeah.
So you started with teaching. Is that something that you had a personal interest in?
Well, at that time, the community was all teaching. So if you entered, you're sure you were going to teach. So I like that because it was with children, working with children. And so I taught in Massachusetts. The only place I taught in Maine was North Caribou.
Mm-hmm.
We had started a school, Sacred Heart School, and they had closed 7 little schools in the back settlement, and we had started. So yeah, it lasted quite a few years after I left, but then it closed. Yeah, but it was helping these children, and it was a big thing because they came from all different schools. But that was good. Yeah. But you had to help them to really organize. And at that time, we didn't teach one grade. It was 3 grades. I have 5, 6, and 7. The first time I went there. And the second time was 6, 7, and 8. So you had 3. And it's a whole thing to organize because you have them, let's say 3, 4, 5. The 5th grade, you're going to have them 1 year. But the other ones, you have 2 years. You have to make sure that you don't repeat. You have other things. So it was interesting to teach that way. And then after, when I left not Caribou. They transferred me to St. Anne's and Lawrence. Now, St. Anne's and Lawrence, the pastor didn't want to open two other classrooms. So he said, she comes from North Caribou. She knows combined classes, so we'll have open only one class. So it was 5th and 6th grade. So, because they had never done it here. But I was used to it, so you can interest the children to really, because someone go fast, so they listen to the other class. So it's a learning experience for all of them. Yeah.
Now, did you find a big difference in the communities where you went to teach, like in Lawrence or when you were teaching?
No.
Were the communities very different?
No. No. People were very helpful. Yeah. And I think in Caribou, the parents were more interested in school than in Lawrence. I think Lawrence, there were so many children. That would be there. But Caribou, the families were very supportive of their education for their children.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Now, were these, tell me something about Grand Isle. I'm not that familiar with it. What is Grand Isle like compared to Biddeford?
It's a small town. It's a small town. We knew everyone. And we lived near the St. John River. It's a little bit like that. My home there, my room, I see the river. It's about the same length from our house at home to the river. So we live between the river and the railroad track. So my mother was very strong. Don't go near the river and don't cross the track because without permission. And we had one of my little brother. He wasn't in school yet, so he crossed the track without my mother knowing it. So when he came back, she said, "Where have you been?" So you crossed the track? Yes. Well, you know the punishment. You're going to have to go downstairs in the cellar and sit on that bench. So he went. Of course, he was crying. And all of a sudden, he stopped crying. So I remember we opened the door. He was sitting on this bench and eating donuts because my mother had made donuts while we were in school. And he knew it, and he knew where they were. So he was eating donuts.
That sounds like a good punishment.
Yeah. You never know. But this was always something that was very serious for us to cross the railroad track.
Now, is Grand Isle a French community?
Yes. The only English was the policeman because, you know, there was a ferry that crossed to Canada, so you always had to report to the police. They were Protestant, but they came to school at 9 o'clock because we had permission to teach religion in this school at 8:30, and they were part of us. And if there was something in church, they'd come. So you know that was the only exciting thing that happened for them, though, because it was so small. But we had a good school, though. Yeah.
Now,
and
did
a
you?
church? Yeah.
I was going to say, did you speak French at home?
Oh yes.
Just French?
Yeah.
When did you start speaking English?
Well, in school we learned English a little bit, and then later on, yeah, in high school it was more English. Yeah.
Was it encouraged to keep the French?
It wasn't forbidden to speak English, because the parents were happy if you, because you know 2 languages is always and that didn't make any difference. I had a brother who went to University of Wisconsin, and he had his doctorate in French, and during World War II, he was a French interpreter. And my other one, he graduated from Marquette University of California, and he was a Russian interpreter during World War II. So language was easy. So you could, but I only have French and English.
Now, so when you moved from Grand Isle to Biddeford, was that a difficult transition at all?
Well, I was leaving my family, and at that time, we didn't visit our family. I didn't visit my family for 7 years. So at that time, that was serious. And I have a baby sister that was born after I entered the convent. But I didn't see her. I think she was like 4 years old when I met her. So things like that did happen.
When did you decide to become a sister?
Oh, this was always because I knew that they had mission and they took care of children. This was the important thing, taking care of children. Because at that time, at home, I don't remember about pregnant women. I'm sure there was some, but at that time, the family really covered that. But it was only for children. Yeah. And then in school, I used to like the teacher to help with the little ones and all that. So this was the interest was with children.
So that's what you envisioned when you
Yes.
decided to make.
That's correct.
Now, there are a lot of different orders of sisters.
Oh, yes.
Why did you choose the Good Shepherd Sisters?
Well, I had two aunts that were daughters of wisdom. And one was a missionary, and the other one was a chef, a cook for it. But they used to say we serve the same God. Don't worry. So this was, and I had an uncle who was a priest, and he was the first priest that went to Papua New Guinea. And the church had asked for to send someone. They were cannibals. So for 2 years, one of them went to Washington to learn all the laws of that country to make sure and my uncle went to meet the people, but there was always a policeman with him because they were cannibal, you never know. Yeah. But see, I had all these people and the example of missionaries, and my aunt who was a chef, she was in Ontario, I think, where the priests and the seminaries were learning there. So this was her job. So I always have the support of these aunts and uncle, but they were saying, don't worry. And I have a sister that's a presentation. Well, she liked the presentation. She went there. Yeah.
Now, how did you find out about the Good Shepherd Sisters? Were there any up there?
Well, they came, I think I was it had to be the freshman class, when the pastor had asked for sisters to come. So there was a convent, and some Good Shepherd sister came. So that's how we met the Good Shepherd at that time.
Oh, at Grand Isle, there were some Good
Isle,
Shepherd Sisters.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that was good.
Mm.
And then the teaching, where I did most teaching, was in Methuen. We had a school of St. Teresa, and I was principal there for a good number of years. Because we had the children from the orphanage that came to school there, and the parish. So it was hard. You really have to be a good teacher to have these people merge. And we were the first school to have a colored child. And we had prepared the classes. We had talked about colored childs and when they came and all that, because they were not the same color, the whole history. So everybody was so eager to hear, because we hadn't told them what class they would be in. But see, they were accepted, but that was a big thing. But you have to do a lot of work so that was good.
Because I imagine growing up in Grand Isle, you weren't exposed to a lot of diversity.
No, they up north, the first time that they saw a person, a colored person, was when the air base started in Limestone. Because before that, there was none. So that this, how history goes, huh? Yeah. But,
So I go back to when you decided to become a sister. You said back then you weren't allowed to see your family. So how did your family react when you announced you wanted to be a sister?
oh, they were supportive. They were supportive, yeah. Because we have the aunts and the uncles, so that was different. They knew all about that, so, yeah. So, but they knew that different communities have different rules, so it was different. But they accepted that.
But that must have been difficult for you too, because were you close to your
yes,
family?
I used to miss the little ones and all that. But see, some 5 of them were born after I entered the convent. But there's no difference in communication. So that because I come from a family of 16, so that's really, yeah.
What's that like?
Yeah. Well, we didn't have to invite too many people. The house was always full. But my mother was a home ec teacher, so she knew how to organize. Every Saturday, we had what we were going to do the following week. And if we didn't do the thing right the previous week, somebody's going to be on your back. But she was a very good mother to teach us. No?
Now, can you remember some of the traditions that your family had back when you were still living at home?
Well, aunts and uncles with their family always liked to come home. The house on Sunday, the house was more than full, and my mother would cook and keep them for supper. So we always say, now who's going to come next Sunday? But yes, so they, like we said, Sister Dorina that's here, her family every Sunday. So we had children about the same age, so we would pray together. So we were a very close family on both sides, my mother's side and my father's side. So that makes a difference.
Now, what did you guys do for fun as a family?
Oh, we were great singers. My father was a singer in the choir. So he would rock the baby and practice his Gregorian chant. So we learned all the Gregorian chant. And all the uncles and all, they were all, so we got together. They used to play cards and sing. So this was a very thing. I remember how we did sing.
So any special foods you remember? There was a lot of cooking.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, the regular, it was always, very tasty. And it's because I'm not fussy for food, so I liked everything she did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And on Sunday, my father used to cook the Sunday dinner. So it used to be a roast and potatoes and vegetables. So,
Your father used to cook the Sunday dinner.
yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Give your mother a break?
Yes, that's true. So we used to go to an early mass, and he used to go to the second mass, so he could start the dinner and have that before.
What were holidays like?
Oh, we had decorations on holidays. There was always something special for holiday that she would do. Yeah, so that's and then after Christmas, but I guess we were a big family because she never decorated the Christmas tree before the night before. We saw it at Christmas, but not like today. They start at Thanksgiving. Yeah, but it was the night before. So at Christmas, we had the lovely Christmas tree and all the gifts. And the gifts were usually clothes. She was a very good seamstress, so we used to have clothes. So that was good.
Now, did you go to midnight mass?
Not when we were young. My father used to be the one that sang "Mille mi chrétien." Yeah, so that I was about maybe 13 or 14 when I went to the midnight mass. Because before that, because children usually didn't go. If you were 13 or 14, you would.
Now, did your family come visit you when you were here in Biddeford?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, once they
Yeah,
they
that's
changed
correct,
it
yeah,
so that you could see your
Because
family.
my father worked for the railroad, so they had a free ticket on the railroad at that time.
Now, let's see. So when you first moved to Biddeford, you were at the Adam Street Convent, you said?
That's when I entered. I was
Okay.
there. But when I came back, that's where I went also because it was still there. Yeah. And then after, they sold the convent, and I was at Fitzback on Elm Street.
Now, how big was your class when you entered the convent?
To teach,
When you joined the sisters?
we were 14. Yeah, and 12 stayed. There's 2 that left, but that was good. We're still 2 living, and we're both here.
Really?
And, it's the oldest one, Sister Estelle Leblanc, and she's 97. And I'm the next, no, Sister Teresa Butot is the next one. I'm the third. I'm 94.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Now, how do you feel that the sisters were? What was the reception of the sisters in Biddeford? Do you feel that they were
yeah.
welcomed?
Oh, yeah, they were very happy to have these young people come in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Because we didn't, only certain days that we had holidays, we could be with them, but besides that, we were not. We were a group aside.
Now, because you happen to live through some of the major events in history, like
Yeah.
World War One and World War Two, is
No,
there
World
any
War II.
World War Two rather?
Yeah. Because that's the day we entered in August, and World War II started in December. So we had all these, what do you call it? They'd ring the bell, and all the lights had to go on. And we had to go down in this room that we kept all closed, so they wouldn't see any light. And I remember we had to bring some water, and oh yeah. I think it was all for water, to make sure that you had water. Yeah.
Now, were you here in Biddeford during
that was
time?
Biddeford. Yeah, at that time. Yeah, but I don't remember what they used to call that. But we'd have some in the middle of the night. Then we had to get up and get in that room.
Now, were there any shortages in terms of supplies or food or anything like
Oh yeah,
that?
at that time you had sugar and butter and all these things you had to have a special paper to get them. Yeah. So whoever did the buying had the problem. We didn't.
I heard that there was some lines, so they're the ones who had to stand in line. Now, were you here during, I understand there was a big fire in 1947?
No, I wasn't. I
You
was
wasn't
in
here?
Massachusetts.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let's see, are there any other major events that happened through time that you feel had a really big impact on the sisters?
Mhm. You always feel bad when we had sold the convent at 69 Avenue, and it was on fire. So we all went to really see that fire because we had lived there. That was really something that
That must have
affected a lot
hurt.
of people. Yeah, yeah.
Because you lived there how many years?
Well, I lived there at least 3 years to start, and when I came back, I think it was like 4 or 5. Yeah. So that was a good number of years. So
Yeah.
and the people, the sisters from Biddeford, of course, they remember that space also. All of us had made our novitiate there, so it was a special house. Yeah.
Now, this is taking a couple of steps back, but so you went to school yourself. You
Yeah.
started out in Grand Isle.
Yeah, at Lincoln School.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was that like?
Yeah, I remember my teachers. Yeah, and even when I was working at St. Anne, my kindergarten teacher had come to visit me. Everybody was so surprised to see that she was my kindergarten teacher. Yeah, we had very good teachers. Yeah, yeah, men and women. And we only had sisters and we only had freshmen and sophomore. We didn't have the two. We had to go to Masqua, Madawaska, or Van Buren, or St. Agatha. But I didn't go to any of those. Then when I entered the convent, American school in Chicago helped us to get our two last year. So this is how I got it.
It must have been a little bit of a transition going from a little school near Grand Isle to some of these bigger places.
Well, I like school, so it doesn't make a difference you go, because I have some, my brothers left Grand Isle and went to California and went to Wisconsin to Marquette University. Those were big things, but they did well. So that means we had very good teacher in Grand Isle.
So is it your parents or the school or both that really encouraged you to, hey, whatever you want to do, you can do it?
My mother was saying, this is the way we do things. If you think you can do it better, go ahead. She was very challenging. So she was whatever you chose, she helped them. And so that was good. Yeah.
But it didn't seem like there was an expectation that you were to stay close and that you were limited.
Oh, no. I was the only girl with 7 boys, so I was all dressed to kill. I had the latest style, and she always looked in the Spiegel magazine and would dress me up with those latest style. So, but she only had 1 girl at that time. Yeah. So
she must have found it difficult when you left home to go to school.
Yes, because that's where my first sister was born after. Yeah, but then none of my clothes that she had kept fitted the others. So.
Did you find it a difficult transition when you were in college? Was it very difficult? No.
No. I guess if you're interested in education, it doesn't make a difference who you are.
Now, when you were saying that, so you started in teaching because the order had you start as all as teachers. Yeah. And so then they threw something completely different at you.
Well, yeah.
What was that like?
Well, they say you're organized, and so it would be good in the finance office that you would do that, and you know some business and so forth. So that's how they put me there. So, but I did well though. I did, and if I needed help, because in Massachusetts I had the finance, but I was dealing with the Boston bishop, so I could get help from them and all that. Because when I left, I came here, and then after, whoever they had hired didn't work, and the things were all mixed up. So the Cardinal Cushing asked me to go and fix that up, though, so we can hire somebody else. So I had done a good job, I guess.
You weren't intimidated by having to deal with these?
No. With Cardinal Cushing, no. But you never knew what he would do. So one time, we had the board of directors, we had a meeting, and I had prepared a nice lunch. So here he comes and said, I want some hard candy. I said, oh my God, where am I going to get hard candy? But you never knew what he would ask. But he was very good, though. Yeah.
Now, when you were doing, because I've heard you say that you really liked working with children, when they asked you to get in an office and deal with all these figures, did you find a way to still stay connected?
Well, at St. Anne, it was an orphanage.
Okay.
So I had to take care of the children.
So you had to do some of those duties too.
Yes, I always had time for them. And then they knew if they needed something, they'd come and see me. Go see Sister Vi, she's going to give it to you.
She's the one with the purse strings as well. Were there any big cultural differences in terms of when you were like in the communities of Lawrence or Methuen versus Biddeford? How was Lawrence and Biddeford similar or different?
Well, it was teaching. But when I came to St. Andre's, it was completely different because it was social work. But you know, if you leave Lawrence or leave Biddeford and go teach in Lawrence, it's teaching, so the teachers get together. It's more knowing the children. You know, if you go, you ask them, you know, what do we have to watch out and so forth. So we'd help each other like that. You get used to it.
Are the cities very different? You know, as a community, but what's it like to live in Biddeford versus Lawrence?
Well, Lawrence was more like a city at that time. Yeah, a little bit less than Biddeford.
Do you see a difference? Did you see efforts to try to preserve, like, the French culture and the French language?
Well, Biddeford was always for the French culture, I think. In Lawrence, yes and no, because you had many. At that time, they didn't have other than French and English, but it was less. Well. In school, you had half a day of French and half a day of English, even in Massachusetts.
It was like that in Massachusetts as well.
Yeah, so it was, the balance was about the same, though.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't have any problem with that.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that the French people were treated the same by non-French people, both in Biddeford and in Lawrence? You felt comfortable, or?
I didn't see in Lawrence, you had the French, and you had the Irish. You had the Irish school. You had the Irish church, St. Mary's, but we went. Many of them went to St. Mary's Church, so they could go to an Italian school, a French and English, to a church that's Irish, so that didn't make... It all depends where they live. They could belong to the parish there, yeah. So I didn't see any of that.
So you never felt any discrimination for being Franco?
I don't know if that word was really popular at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know if you were talking about the parishes here. From your experience, did you experience a difference in the parishes in Biddeford?
It was St. Joseph that I went, so it was always... and there was connection with St. Andre's, and there was connection with St. Mary's also. I didn't see anything that you were against one of the other. And the same thing in Lawrence. We had St. Patrick's, St. Mary's, and St. Anne's. So there was I didn't see any of that. I wasn't looking for it. That could be, though.
But you didn't feel it.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I've just really been impressed upon about your background is you've been very active in some very responsible leadership roles, whether it was in addition to your career, you've been on boards.
Oh, yeah.
So
I still am.
How did those opportunities come about for you?
Well, it's helping, and it's an education. You know, it doesn't make any difference what board you are. What's that board for? Who are they helping? And where's their trouble? So, you know, every board is like that. So you have to learn that.
So you enjoyed those roles and you were fully accepted.
Oh, yeah. So
because it's not all women that have had those opportunities.
That's really true, though. That's really true. Because when I went to the state, sometimes I was the only woman at that. And I went to legislature many times, and I was the only woman. But that didn't bother me. I was there for another reason, not because I was a woman. But that really is
That's pretty amazing.
Because
pretty amazing
see, if for instance at the state level, when we started on Medicaid, it was PNMI, private non-medical institution, that the group homes came. So you had to really make sure that Medicaid, you knew about that, and how you report all the reports. And sometimes some group homes in other places had a hard time. So they would say, go see Sister Vi, she's going to help you because she knows how to do it. So things like that, you support them, and then after they know who to. So that's good, though. Yeah, because I never had a hard time with the legislature and congressmen when we met.
Because all of most of the funding for those kinds of programs have been through.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know that. Every year was every time you renewed an allocation, it was always a big thing. And many times they look to close you. One time we got the message that you have to close your group home because your group home is for women and you have babies there. Well, if you have pregnant women, there's going to be a baby. So you had to present it to them. Look, if we have pregnant, we're going to have the babies with it. And we have to teach the mother to take it. They had never thought about that. Huh? So you really never know. Or in one time, they decided that you have to close because you're taking care of women that are over 18. And all the money that we paid you for the last 10 years, you're going to have to give it back. I didn't have a cent to give it back. So I did the statistics. How many we had over 18 all these years, and how many below. I had put all their age because I had good report for statistics, and how many babies we had. So I get all that. And I had finished that at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I said, now what do I do with that report? Who do I touch? I said, well, I'm going to go to bed. Maybe tomorrow morning I'll say. So tomorrow morning I still don't know. So I went to Mass. And the gospel was from St. John. I said, my God, John from Eagle Lake. So I called him. I said, are you going to be in Augusta this morning? He said, yes, but I have a meeting at 10 o'clock. What if I'm there for 9 o'clock because I have a problem? Sure, come. So I bring him all this. He said, well, wait a minute. I know what to do with it. Don't worry, though. I don't think I'll be able to do it this week, but next week I'll do it. So he did all that. And then after, I didn't owe them a penny, but they owed me some money. So that was a good policy.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. Now, I did want to spend some time talking about St. Andre's Home, and
Yeah.
thank you for providing that
Yeah.
report. That's going
Yeah.
to help a lot. And so you must have some information in there about how many babies were born at St. Andre's Home or under the
Yeah.
auspices of Notre Dame.
Until 2015, I have all these statistics.
Now, was it just unwed mothers, or were there married mothers that came to St. Andre's too?
Well, when they were here, because the hospital was really full and all that, they had asked that we would accept married women for the hospital because we had our own hospital. And we did that for, I think, 11 years. Yeah. But at St. Andre's, when we had the group home, we had a few married women. They were divorced, though. But we've had some.
Now, was there a reason at some point that they discontinued accepting married mothers as patients?
Well, that was the state. And we had an order from the state that as of June 30th, 2013, you can no longer take any clients, because they had decided before, 2 years before, that they were the only ones sending clients. We could not accept other clients. It was only the state client. So they had closed all the group home. There was 40 group home in the state of Maine. They closed them all. We all received the same letter. So
That mustn't have been good news to get.
yeah, that was really. But I think they realized they did wrong, because you have all these women with all the problems they have now. If they had had help when they first got the baby, you wouldn't have all these babies that they have in foster care. So that's yeah. But they have to find out. They make the rules, but many rules are wrong. But it takes them years to find out, or a new one is going to get there and knows that this is wrong, so we should do this to try to repair. So it could come back, group home, but it's going to take some years. Yeah.
Is that one of the biggest changes that you've seen, kind of doing that?
Yes, that's one of the biggest things that the state had done to really harm people. Yeah, they didn't see the problem of these women. So if you don't see the problem, you're not going to do anything.
How did the women find you? How did they find the group homes? Is it pretty well known out there? Or?
Yeah. Because I guess everybody knew. St. Andre's always had a service that no other agencies had. It was always a special thing that we have, and the others do not. So pregnant women were because when St. Andre's started, the only place that a young woman, pregnant, unmarried, would be the women's prison in Skowhegan. There was no other place. So,
How long would they stay here?
It could sometimes, if it was just pregnancy, and once they give birth, they give their baby or keep their baby. That could be a year and a half. But when they were parenting, it could be 2 years and sometimes 3. It all depends how well they were doing.
Someone shared with me that when the new wing was added in 1965, there was a time capsule that was buried.
What?
Someone said there was a time capsule that was buried. And is that anything you're aware of?
No.
You're not aware of that? Okay.
When it must be when they open, but that would be in 1940.
Okay.
Yeah.
They said something about a new wing was added in 1965.
Oh, okay. Yeah. They did. They did have a new wing, so they may have put one there. I have no idea.
You don't know anything about
Yeah.
it. And were there any sisters that were transferred specifically from Quebec to come work at St. Andre's?
Any special assistance?
Were there any sisters from Quebec that were assigned to come work at St. Andre's?
Yes, but we had some in all our convent that were Canadian sisters. Some were teachers,
Mm-hmm.
and others were laundress or cooks. Yeah, there were. And at St. Andre's, I'm sure there were. I'd have to look back at the list of sisters, but they at that time it was the same work in Canada as in the United States, so they were used to get adapted to that work. Yeah.
What language was pretty much spoken at St. Andre's home through the years?
Well, it was French, but when we started having young sisters who came and spoke only English, then it was decided that the main language, we should take the language of the country where we live. And that's where English became popular. It's like French is French. If you go to Biddeford, it's going to be Sisuto and all these things. So you take the language of the country where you work.
When did that change start to come around?
It was a decision, mon Dieu, I don't remember the year, but it was a decision of the general chapter. Yeah.
Okay. Who were there doctors that worked at the home? Were there doctors that worked at St. Andre's home, or were they volunteers, or who did the deliveries?
They were doctors from Biddeford.
Okay.
And we had chosen them because the doctors we had was very good to the pregnant women. That was one thing. Father Forzillo, he was the best one. And then after we accepted married, it was only from the doctors that work at St. Andre's that could send their married women.
So you mentioned Dr. Fortier, so he's connected to the sisters?
He was really. And he, even when I was working at St. Andrews, he'd drop by some afternoon just to see how is this sister doing, this sister. So, so he was very, he loved Sister Mary Priscilla. She was the nurse in charge. And he used to say, when she called you for a delivery, you move, because she doesn't call us to lose your time. So that was it. Yeah.
Now, what role did the St. Andre's Ladies Auxiliary play in helping the home?
They were really helpful. At first, we didn't have anything, so they loved the girls also, they said. And they used to have the meeting. I attended quite a few meetings when I was there, and it was, what do we work this year on? They used to have projects to work on to help. So that's good. So they really helped a lot. And then they continued after the group home. And they always helped the Biddeford group home because, see, this was Biddeford and Biddeford. So they used to, and they do it for the girls. Yeah, they'd have the Christmas. They had meetings once a month, I think, at the group home, and they'd always bring something for the girls. They were really good.
Well, something that really impresses me that you keep saying is that some of these different people who were associated with the home just were really dedicated to helping the girls.
Oh, yeah.
Because being an unwed mother, especially when you go years back, was not exactly.
That's correct. No, that was not an honor.
That was not an honor.
Yeah. Even with families. You had, this little girl was 14 years old, and she had got with this man, so the family had disowned her. It was Thanksgiving, and she was roaming the street, so the police stopped her, bring her. She had not eaten for 4 days, and she was pregnant. So in the morning, I always went to work early, so I got a phone call from the police. I got a phone call from the department, from the doctor, to take her, but she was 14. So we had to call the family. But the family was good. If she goes to St. Andre's, we will help her. And at the end, they really helped, and they kept the baby. They said, we will help her to bring her baby. But imagine, she hadn't eaten for 4 days. Once he found out she was pregnant, he just threw her out. So, but after that, the doctor had told us really what to give her to eat, how to follow for about a whole week. But that was, we had her the day before Thanksgiving.
I think that's one of the things that I wonder about is especially growing up, Catholic and going, knowing that was not an honor.
Yeah.
How hard it must have been to go to some sisters
to
get care.
Yeah.
Because it may not have been obvious that they would be welcome.
We helped many families to really get together when their daughter was pregnant. Because we had one, the daughter was pregnant by her brother. So the mother was saying, that's really our blood. And many times the families became reunited because we have helped them. So that was good. Yeah. Those things are always, it's always helping people to come better or to be better. Just like the Unwed Mothers.
That's pretty amazing. So can you give me kind of like an overview of the evolution of adoption through all of this? Because that's changed a lot.
A lot of things went through adoption because, and then after we had international adoption. So this was a whole new study to do that. And every year we had a picnic with the adoption families. So it was always in Bayview, and so that was good. And it was united them at the same time because the parents would get together. Sometimes they had a hard time. What do you do with this and all? They would help each other. And one time it was a family that was adopting a Chinese baby. It had to be a girl because you couldn't adopt a boy. You know what they would do? To get rid of girls, they would put them on the windowsill, and the little baby would fall and die to get rid of the girls. Now they're having a problem because they don't have enough girls. But anyhow, we get a phone call in the middle of the night, so the director got that, saying that they would not let them pass because we had told them, don't pay anyone, because we had all fixed it up, and so they wouldn't let them cross because they wanted to be paid. So we called Washington, and it was the senator from Maine. I don't remember his name. Anyhow, he called China and find out, and there were some Americans that wanted to be paid. Of course, they lost their job, so they were able to come. But see, sometimes you have problems with that in adoption. And then after, the National started giving reward Angel of Adoption. And Sister Teresa Tallien was the first from Maine. So that was a big thing. And then after, our executive director, Dr. Foles, is now on the archives of adoption in Washington, D.C., after he died. And then after, he was honored for adoption, and it was a big reward in Washington, D.C. So we had gone, and the reception was at the Russian embassy. So that, but it was a nice celebration. So it was because he was on the, he became a member of the National Committee for Adoption at the state level, because we had become a member. So our name was nationwide. So then he was acknowledged for that.
Are you still involved with adoptions now? Is St. Andrew's Home still involved with adoptions now?
No, we don't. But the adoption program is dormant. But if, for instance, someone wants some information, they can call. Like last week, 2 weeks ago, I have one that called me, and she said, I never got any information about adoption, but I know that my birth mother was there. So I said, all right, I'm going to go, because we have all that information at St. Andre. If, for instance, they didn't give the baby for adoption, it's only on the card, but we have a lot of information. But we can go in the book, and we have when the girl entered, what was her name, where she's from, how old she was, when she went to the hospital, the date of the delivery, and then after, if the baby was not adoption, who took the baby. So I was able to give her all that information, and she was really happy. And last year there was a 60-year-old man that called, and he said, I never wanted to look for information because I didn't want to hurt my adoptive mother. And his adoptive mother had died, so he could do that. So you never know when you're going to get a call for someone.
That must have been a big change when they changed the law so that you could now provide that information.
Yeah, but some of them we had promised secrecy, so if we have that, now they can have their own real birth certificate, because when they're adopted, they have a birth certificate. But they can have their birth certificate, and their mother and father is going to be on that one. So that's only 3 or 4 years that the state passed. So you had a lot of change in adoption. And the latest one, though, I don't think there was any secrecy. All the information was given to the adoptive parent. So the parents could tell their adoptive child. So
it must have been hard in the early years. I'm sure that there must have been someone that came back and said, I really want to meet my mother or find out about my birth mother, but you couldn't.
Okay, we always, but if we have the information, if we can still find, a couple of years ago, it was a grandmother that was still living, because we couldn't find where the adoptee was. And she said, well, she's living in England. She had been married, but she will come at Thanksgiving. So when she came at Thanksgiving, we asked, could she come? So she said, she had called her, and she was willing to come. So we met her at Thanksgiving. So that was good. And then after I remember it was the Saturday before Mother's Day. She comes, and her adoptive mother had died. And she gets to the secretary and scream at her, you know who my birth mother is, and you're not saying anything. So anyhow, I went there and got, why don't we come here, Joe? So I said, well, you know, they don't know who your birth mother is. This is all secret and all that. But if you want to write her a letter, I would send it to her. You would do that? I said, yes. So I just said, write me a letter. So it took her almost a month and a half. She said, you know, that's hard to write. I said, yes, that's correct. But I'm going to send it to her. When I get some information, I will call you. So the birth mother was living in Ohio. So I sent her that. Of course, on her letter, she had said, you were born here and all. So that was all wrong. But the birth mother had been one student I had had in North Caribou. So anyhow, when I said, because the other one had said you were born in, I don't remember where, but I said you were born in Caribou, weren't you? She said yes. And I went to school in Caribou. The sisters were there. Where is Mother Saint Benedicta? I said, you're speaking to her. So then she said, I have teenagers. My husband knows that I had that child, but I don't want to tell them now. But she said, next year we're going for a vacation in Cape Cod, and I could meet her if she wants to. And they did. So that was good. Then she was working at the police station. So if we had some girls that had been in trouble in Atlanta, she used to say, go tell Sister Vi you saw me. Yeah.
You must have quite a treasure trove of stories like that where you have seen reunions.
yes,
that
I
must
do.
warms your heart.
Yeah. But that was always helping people. Yeah. But
So, what is something you'd want to make sure that people take away from hearing your story?
well, that I was a helping person. I think it doesn't make any difference if it was finance or pregnant or babies or whatever, or grandparents. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And is there anything in particular about Biddeford as a community that maybe we didn't ask about that, what do you think about when you think about Biddeford as a community?
It was always the center where we were. But, I helped people from all over the state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have you seen Biddeford as a community change over the years?
I guess I'm so involved in these services that I forget. But the people that were on our board, many of them were from Biddeford, and they were very good.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a plus.
So overall, you'd say that Biddeford as a community has been supportive of this cause?
Oh, yeah. If, for instance, they had not been supported, do you think we'd be in Biddeford? No.
That's a good point.
They were, yeah. So that was good.
And I've asked a lot of questions. Is there anything else you'd like to share that maybe I didn't ask?
No, I think I told you a wide range of things.
Now I see that you have some papers there.
I had put that because see, the last time they had some new board members at St. Andre's, so they asked me to give them the history of St. Andre's. So I had some of the things here. So I keep them. I had kept them in the same file.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I thank you so
Yeah.
much for your
Yeah.
time.
Well, thank you. It's nice to meet you. Yeah. Okay.